Hello, and welcome to the Masterclass of Shifting Out of Survival Mode. This is a powerful place. Hi, welcome to this Masterclass of Shifting Out of Survival Mode. This is a super, super powerful place where you can have the most beautiful things in your business, in your life. You can find that abundance and stability, that fast paced and refreshed place. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be go, go, go. And then are totally depleted. It can be this beautiful place of abundance. And I'm going to teach you how to do that today. If you have any questions today on this masterclass or after watching the replay, please be sure to message me, to comment, and I would love to support you in your version of shifting from an out of survival mode. So it's just really not a necessary place for us to be anymore. And I guarantee that we've all had it happen, right? We've all went, go, go, go to meet a deadline, and we're barely keeping our head above water. We work longer hours, maybe we skip out on meals or sleep, and we say no to our families, our friends, or events that actually truly bring us joy and help us create this passion for our business, this impact that we're making in our lives. And so, in the end, after the big deadline, we might feel like we're getting sick, or in the middle like we're getting sick. And then isn't it interesting how sometimes after those big deadlines you're just like your body like whew, like the adrenaline leaves you and you're left with the aftermath, right? Maybe you feel sick, maybe you crumple on the couch for several hours or need to like zone out, right? Like you need to numb because you've been going, your tank is totally empty. And not only for our business, but for those we love most, for those who we live this life for. And you're just really spent because you went so hard. And I get it. Like you care so much. You want to go, you want to do, you want to say yes. And what happens when we continue to do that without becoming aware of what's going on, becoming aware of the ways we might be shifting into burnout, is that we end up burnt out, right? And we are constantly in this survival mode, right? Like when this is over, then I can do this. Or after this busy season, then it will be easier. And I get that you sometimes have busier seasons. I get that you sometimes have deadlines or that you have deadlines. I have deadlines all the time, and that's what helps keep me on track. I enjoy deadlines for that reason, but it doesn't have to be sink or swim. It doesn't have to be feast or famine. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Again, your business can be busy and calm. It can be abundant and stable. It can be fast paced because your life and your world and your business is fast paced, and it can be calm and you can feel refreshed. It doesn't have to be that all or nothing, that go, 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 or I'm just on the couch or needing to take a vacation to get away from this, right? And I encourage you to take vacations, but not to do it because you have to get the heck out of here, because you can't stand it another moment, because you're so overwhelmed, because you have to check out. You do it because you're intentional about it. So what does survival mode look and how does it look like and how does it affect you? So it can look like several different things, and everyone is different and everyone has a different perspective of survival mode. So some of you may be like, well, I'm not really stuck in survival mode, but what it can look like is being very overwhelmed, being anxious, reactive, right? Like someone comes to you for something and you're like, you just instantly react because maybe you're tired or your brain is just fried. There's a distraction that comes along with this, right? And being the survival mode of like, I don't have time, I have to focus, I can't stop, I can't do anything else, I can't breathe, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't XYZ, right? We get caught in these moments. And again, it's a different level for everyone. And we all feel it, interpret it, and live it differently. This can show up as being very cynical or negative. I've caught myself in this, right? Where my husband's like, oh yeah, trying to like get me to see the perspective. And I'm just like, I can't see the light or I don't notice the light. And this is easy to do when we are surrounded by those that we love. It just is. We feel safer there to like let our guard down and, like want them to support us in that. But really, that cynicism or that negativity does nothing except collaborate or combobulate our thoughts of even more of shifting into burnout or overthinking or overdoing or feeling overwhelmed. We might feel hopeless or unmotivated, right? Like, I've got all this work to do, but I actually just don't want to do any of it. Have you ever felt that way? We might detach. We might say, oh my gosh, like this is happening and this is what I'm feeling and this is what I've got on my plate that has to get done by tomorrow. And honestly, all I want to do is escape, right? Like, we want to escape. We want to maybe numb our brains. This is where bad habits can start or continue, or, continue to expand and expound. We might feel a sense of failure. And this is because we have unintentional thoughts, right? These thoughts that maybe have been leading us or that are in our lives that we're just not paying attention to. I love, love, love definitions. You guys know that about me. But the definition of burnout, I thought this was like so profound, is the reduction of a fuel or substance to nothing through use or combustion. So we have used or combusted all of our energy sources, so much so that we have nothing left to give. Whew, what a perfect definition of burnout, would you say? And so it's really a state of this complete mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And I've been there. And this isn't to say I'm not going to be there again, but what happens when we are on this like go 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 burnout, go 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 burnout, and we need this phase and we are always feeling like we just can't ever catch up? There is something you can do about it, and I'm so excited to shift that for you today, to help you shift that with your conscious decision to do so. And so, again, if you're experiencing burnout, you may find that it's difficult to engage in activities that you normally find are meaningful, whether in your life or in your work, right? You're go, 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 and you're just like, I got to keep pushing. Yet we don't have the brain capacity, the physical capacity, even to keep supporting ourselves in that. So, what can we do when we are feeling or noticing that we are in survival mode or that we are shifting towards burnout? Number one is to acknowledge the cycle. Now you're like, okay, if I'm there, like, how do I stop to acknowledge it, right? We notice the symptoms. Maybe we feel overwhelmed or anxious or we're reactive, right? Like, we lash out at one of our staff members or one of our family members or someone that we love. We're distracted, right? It's like, why can't I focus? What's going on here? And so we just start to notice those things without judgment, which is super powerful. So we acknowledge the cycle or the cycles that we've been in, right? Without that awareness, we can't shift or change. And some people avoid the acknowledgement. I avoided the acknowledgement for years and years because it was hard to face. It was hard for me to be like, yep, I'm on my way to burnout. That's not something easy to say. That's not something that's like, yeah, okay, hi, I'm burnt out. But once we acknowledge it, oh my gosh, it opens the doors for the most beautiful way for you to shift the cycle, to shift out of that survival mode. And so the first thing, I have some awareness questions for you that will help you. Number one, awareness, like, what's going on? Are you feeling distracted? Are you feeling unorganized? Are you feeling overwhelmed? And this just like isn't who you truly are. And sometimes we function in this mode so much that we've become this person, that we've become this type of energy. So number one, we are awareness. And we ask ourselves, when does the burnout tend to happen? Is it when I'm going for a deadline? Is it a certain time of the year? Is it a certain time of the month in my business when I have deadlines to meet? Is it when I do a certain project for someone or when I am committing to something in particular? What leads up to it, right? Is it a hard conversation? Is it an order that has to get placed? Is it trying to fulfill something that's going on in your business, trying to fulfill that, um the sales, or talking to someone or having the conversations? So we notice it, we recognize it, we recognize the signs and the symptoms. It's like, as a nurse, I'm like, okay, let's get very curious about what's going on here. Why am I doing this? And how we can notice that is just taking a simple pause. And it's so powerful. So ask yourself, when does the burnout tend to happen? And if you are, as you're listening to this, go ahead and write this down. When does it tend to happen? Like, when do you need to stop and take a break? Like I am so depleted, I can't go on, kind of burnout break because you're so burnt out. When does that tend to happen? After what? After, this circumstance or situation. And then what are all the details that leads up to it? So just become very aware and list those out. It's powerful. And then we want to understand, what is the truth about these cycles? Right? Because a lot of times we have thoughts about them, right? Like if we always say like, well, I'm not good at this part of my business, we will continue to think that. And then we will continue to feel overwhelmed with that part of our business. And so finding the truth about the cycles, about our thoughts about that, and then how can we shift the language? This is all part of the awareness, becoming aware of your language around it and saying, okay, I'm choosing not to think that way. I'm choosing to shift that because this is part of my business. This is part of what makes me successful. This is part of the influence and the impact I'm making in my life, in other people's lives through this work. And so being aware of how can you shift the language. Next thing is set realistic expectations. Now, for years and years and years, I would set goals that were very lofty. I would set goals that were beautiful and big, but they were kind of frivolous, right? Like I wasn't actually doing the math. I wasn't actually finding the facts. I overestimated what I could do in a day, and I underestimated what I can do in a year. So I used to have that sticky note up on my computer for a long time as I was growing and developing into my professional business of, we often overestimate what we can do in a day, right? We cram it all in. And then we underestimate what we can actually do in a year. And so really the premise of this is taking a look at what that is, doing the math, knowing your numbers, what's happening, how do I produce these results? And then we take action from there. We set goals from there, right? So for example, this is a common example, especially when I used to work in health and wellness, is that people would say, okay, Monday morning, I'm going to cook healthy every meal this week. I'm going to lose 10 pounds this week, or 20 or 30, or this month. And like there were these lofty goals. I love lofty goals. But we also have to do the math and say, what is actually realistic within this time frame? And anything is possible. I agree with that. But when we set these goals and these expectations of ourselves, that we're like, wow, that's so interesting. How I would even expect to be in 10 places at the same time. Like, interesting. That is so interesting. So just becoming aware of that. And then we look at those expectations and we look at our trends and we do the math and then we say, okay, what is realistic for me? Here were the things, right? We've already identified the things and acknowledging the cycles of the things that lead to our burnout, of those things that lead us to be in that space of survival mode. And then we can ask ourselves, is that something, right? After it's over, is that something that I'm willing to do again? And we decide in advance and write it down. The perfect example for this for me is like when I have kids, right? Like you are in labor. Labor is hard. Labor hurts. Labor is labor. But I've done it 3 times, right? And so, yes, I am willing to do that again, but maybe it took some time for me to come down from that. But if it's something after you're done, because the result was so big for me, right? But let's say I plan an event for someone and they did not appreciate it, or it was just really not what I was expecting, and I've decided like never again will I do this for this group of people or for this type of audience, But then 6 months from now, they're like, okay, can you do this again? And I'm like, sure, like I have a goal for my income. So sure, I'll do it. Like, no, we need to decide in advance that that just didn't serve us. That didn't create the impact and the influence that we wanted in our lives or in our business. And so, like, I'm going to decide in advance that that's just not something I do anymore, because it's really easy, or can be really easy, to shift into people pleasing and like, yes, of course, I'll do it. Oh, yeah, anytime. And I love to help people and I love to support people, but it's so important to decide in advance, right? I've told many clients, like, this just isn't a good fit for us to work together because I've decided in advance the exact women and woman that I'm ready to work with. And that's a powerful place to be. Do I feel negative emotion when I maybe say no or not right now? Yes, but I've decided in advance, instead of people pleasing, instead of giving up on the trajectory that I've set for what I want to do and who I want to be. I've decided in advance and I've written it down. And I've had many of my clients do this, right? Like they tell me, they're like, I'm never doing that again. I'm like, write it down. It's like a little contract you make with yourself so that when it comes up again and you feel the need to say yes or people please, or, oh, yes, this will fulfill, one of my goals, but we forget. We forget. And so if the answer is yes, yes, I will do this again. Yes, I will. I'm willing to experience that overwhelm, that exhaustion, that distraction. How can I support myself next time? Maybe you get more or extra help. Like, yes, I loved doing that. It was just too much for me personally to handle. So next time I'm going to put this in place. I'm going to put this in place. I know what happened last time and I've already implemented these things. Maybe you create a longer timeline for completion, right? Like, yes, I can do that. I want to do that for you. But instead of 1 week, it will take me 2 weeks because I've done this and I know what to expect. Okay. And maybe we take on less as well. So we set realistic expectations and we decide, is that something I'm willing to do again? And if so, how can I support myself next time? And then the final thing for shifting out of survival mode is scheduling intentional time for a refresh, for a reset, right? And we do this, we schedule it in advance, right? I schedule walks, I schedule swim dates, I schedule date days with my husband. I schedule time in the morning before I start my day to journal, to read, and to meditate. That is an important part of my day, no matter how much work I have to do. When I don't do those things, I shift into burnout, I shift into overwhelm, I shift into distraction. It's so important. And so scheduling that refresh time, even in the midst of a big deadline, even if it's a 5 or 10 minute walk, can be very powerful to come back to this space, to get out of that distracted space. And it's, not a recovery, right? I know so many people are like, oh my gosh, I just can't wait to go on vacation. I need that. I need to recover. It's like our lives and our businesses should not be anything that we need to recover from. It's a beautiful space and we want to feel all the beauty in that all the time. And yes, there are negative emotions. Yes, there are hard things that come up. And that's a part of this whole process. But it's not something that we should want to escape from or that we need to escape from when we make a decision to shift out of survival mode, which is what you're doing today. And it's so awesome. So, this scheduling time to refresh is a mandatory time to avoid burnout, to step away, to reset, to refocus, and prioritize what is next. And we often attempt to go from one deadline to another, not leaving any space in between for reset or rest. And scheduled and intentional rest is much more powerful vibe than being forced to rest because you're sick, because you're burnt out, because you need and are basically knocked onto your booty because you've gone so much. Okay. And so create that power within your business. And it's a beautiful way. And again, this doesn't have to be a week of vacation. This can be a half-hour walk. This can be a 5-minute rest. This could be getting down on the floor and stretching for 5 minutes. Could be meditation, reading, exercising, making a meal for yourself so that you can eat something healthy and sustain the energy that is important to you and for you and for your business. Maybe you schedule time to intentionally declutter and organize. That's an important part of this too, right? Like making sure your space is clean. I've heard so many people say, like, I can't even go into my office, it's so messy. And I'm like, okay, well, that is an intentional thing that you want to do so that our brain doesn't create this, these stories and these thoughts that are going to keep you feeling overwhelmed. Okay. So you are capable of doing this. I know you want to shift out of survival mode. I know that you no longer want to be in this burnout. And so you can decide to do that. You can decide to shift this. And the ways you can do that is acknowledging the cycles, right? Just becoming aware, again, without judgment, like, oh, I shouldn't feel overwhelmed. Oh, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't feel this way. No, it's okay. Like, this is just what it is. You own it, you acknowledge it, and then you ask yourself these questions. When does this burnout tend to happen? What is leading up to it? What's the truth about it? And how can I shift my language? Okay, it's becoming aware without judgment. And then we set realistic expectations. Is this something I want to do again or am willing to do again? And we decide in advance. If so, how can we support ourselves next time? More help, longer timeline for completion, maybe taking on less. And then the next one is scheduling. You are in control of this. You schedule that time to refresh. Even like in the middle of a deadline, like take that time, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes. It's a beautiful time versus being forced to rest and to slow down and to need to reset because you've overdone it. So I love you guys so much. This is a powerful way to shift out of survival mode, and it will change your life. It will change your business. And this is the work that I love to do within my Amplify Academy. This is the powerful work that changes the minds of business owners, of driven womenpreneurs. And I like to say that I help women on the back end of their business, not the computer stuff, not the accounting. The back end is our brain, right? Like this is where all of our beautiful work comes from. But if we have got blocks here, if we have got thoughts, if we have got, these unintentional thoughts that are keeping us stuck, that are keeping us in the same cycles of doing habits, not doing the work, avoiding the work, staying in survival mode, it will be very hard to move forward no matter how much work you're doing. So work on the back end of your business, which is your brain and your thoughts and your core beliefs and the ways that your beautiful brain and body try to protect yourself when things get hard, because life is hard, because life and business are challenging. We want to have the tools to be able to step into those challenges when we feel that negative emotion at the end of our comfort zone, because that's where we grow and that's where we thrive and that's where we live abundantly so that we can give in the most abundant ways. So join me in the Amplify Academy if this is something that you're ready to do. If working on the back end of your business, AKA your brain, is something that you know will support you. I have 2 spots available for my Amplify Academy through the end of March. And please message me the word academy if that's something that you're ready to dive into to change the energy, the influence, and the income in your business. I would love to support you with that. Talk to you soon.